Everton.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. More flooding is expected tonight as fresh storms sweep across Britain. The West Country was the first to be hit by heavy rain coming in from the Atlantic. That's now travelled across the country and heading north, where many parts are on critical alert. The Environment Agency says some areas can expect to receive up to 2 inches of rain during the next 24 hours. Mark Webster reports.
Torrential rain and high winds hit Gloucester as towns along the Severn River prepared for a further tide of floodwater in the near future. Earlier storms had lashed the south coast as the worst fears of flood-ravaged areas were realised. This rain will fall on fields already saturated. The question is now how high the water will rise. Just time to clean up the filth from the last flood before the water levels climb again. Time too to contemplate the damage now the waters have temporarily receded. Pat Jones was evacuated from her home after raging floodwaters breached the flood defences and poured into the ground floor.
Because everything in the kitchen's gone, I mean washing machine, fridge, cooker, everything, so there we are, but we're all right.
Around Gloucester, thousands of acres of farmland are still under deep water and roads are only passable by boat. The emergency services are taking more calls from anxious householders stranded by the water. After an explosion at this chemical factory a few miles from Gloucester, police say some residents will have to be evacuated because of the pollution risk. And across the south tonight in Hampshire, Sussex and Kent, where 20 flood warnings are in operation, poor weather is causing problems there too. Tonight the appalling weather conditions here look set to continue, with gale force winds and driving rain. That makes it almost inevitable that all those towns and villages along the Severn Valley, which have recently suffered the misery of heavy flooding, will see a repeat in the coming days. Mark Webster, ITN, Gloucester.
Further north, 21 severe flood warnings have been issued on 5 rivers in Yorkshire, the Midlands and Wales. In villages in North Yorkshire, people are once again bracing themselves for the bad weather that's on its way. Here's Helen Wright.
It is what everyone in York feared. Tonight, rain is pouring on this city already saturated by floodwater. Fire crews are working through the night, pumping out drains so full of water they threaten to overflow, flooding streets and houses.
The surrounding area is actually absolutely saturated, so the more rain we have, it's got nowhere to go apart from the surface drains, so that's why we're here, as I say, to keep those down.
Hundreds more sandbags are being prepared tonight. They have proved crucial in strengthening York's flood defences and protecting property. Earlier today, the Army laid 20,000 sandbags along the River Ouse downstream from York in the village of Barlby. Families living close to the river were told to pack up and move out, and flood defences designed to protect their homes were strengthened in preparation for tonight's downpour. This rain comes as river levels in North Yorkshire are falling. They are now expected to rise again, peaking on Tuesday, when rain now falling on the North York moors gushes into the River Ouse. Helen Wright, ITN, York.
All over now to Helen Wright in York. Helen, it looks as though it's blustery, to say the least, there.
That's right, Nick. Heavy rain and the wind is really picking up here in York tonight. It's the sort of weather that people here were absolutely dreading. It's been the sole topic of conversation throughout the day. What would the weather be like tonight, and can York cope? As I've been walking around the city this evening, the streets are deserted, restaurants are empty. It really seems like people have decided it's just not worth coming out in this appalling weather and decided to stay safely at home.
So what could the effect of this latest deluge be?
Well, there's something like 40 millimetres of rain expected in the next 36 hours. Obviously, that is going to have an effect on river levels. The River Ouse, I'm standing by the River Ouse now, is expected to peak on Tuesday when all the rain that's falling onto the North York moors flows into the river system. But perhaps a more immediate problem is, as I mentioned in my report, the drains here are so full of water that the real fear is that this rain could cause flooding across roads and across streets even before the river levels rise.
Helen Wright in York, thank you. The bad weather's once again caused widespread travel chaos. It could be another miserable morning for many commuters tomorrow. Roads and railways across the country are likely to be affected. Great Western Railway say the line between Tiverton and Exeter remains closed because of flooding. And the line between Leeds and York is also blocked by water. On the roads, the AA say flooding on the A3 at Guildford is badly affecting traffic flow. And many minor roads are closed in Wales, North Yorkshire, the West Country, the South West, Surrey, Hampshire and Sussex. The Chancellor will tell business leaders tomorrow he won't jeopardise economic stability by caving in to demands to cut fuel taxes. Gordon Brown's address to the CBI annual conference in Birmingham lays the ground for a crucial week for the Chancellor and his government colleagues with his keenly awaited pre-budget report. Here's Kevin Dunn.
Business bosses gathering for their annual conference tonight added their voices to the calls for a cut in fuel tax.
As a cost to business, the fuel tax regime in the country, and it's not just fuel, you know, it's also road use tax, vehicle excise duty for big trucks is massively uncompetitive compared with Europe. Yes, that is a cost to business issue, and I want the Chancellor to look at it.
But Gordon Brown, who addresses the CBI tomorrow, is believed to be planning other measures to help road users, especially owners of smaller cars. And he's expected to make peace with pensioners by announcing an increase of £5 a week, the least they deserve, according to some backbenchers.
Last year's increase of 75 pence was an insult, and since the government is refusing to cut fuel duty and saying that they must balance the interests of the wider community and the pensioners, well, I think now is the time to say, well, we're going to end pensioner poverty once and for all.
The programme of rail repairs, combined with the bad weather, has brought a week of disruption and is now threatening to affect the Christmas post, though ministers hope the political climate is about to improve. Ministers deny they're simply after good headlines on Thursday, but the government is certainly looking to reassert its control over events and dispel the recent sense of drift. Kevin Dunn, ITN, Westminster.
America's now on the last lap in the race for the White House. With 2 days to go before the presidential election, George W. Bush is marginally ahead in the polls. Both candidates are now campaigning hard for those crucial undecided voters. Here's our America correspondent, James Mates.
It is now a desperate race to the finish line. Bush appearing whenever possible with America's most respected soldier, Colin Powell, at his side. The last moments of any campaign are always a frantic scramble for votes, but this time, no one doubts it really could make the difference.
A president who can unite, not divide. A president who'll go to Washington not with a party in mind, but with the people in mind. And I'll be that president.
George Bush and his campaign staff do think they've done enough to win this one, despite the hiccups of the last few days. But their confidence is not based on very much. In the key battleground states where this election will be decided, it is still desperately close. Vice President Gore was in one of those battleground states, Pennsylvania. And this was a political rally, an appeal to his mostly black audience to get the black vote out for him on Tuesday.
I'm asking not only for your vote, but for your enthusiasm and for your dedication, for your willingness to really go the extra mile and get a very large turnout on Tuesday.
If the Democrats can get their people to the polls, Al Gore has every chance of winning this. If they fail, then George Bush is likely to convert his narrow opinion poll lead into a narrow victory. James Mates, ITN, Florida.
Football, and Aston Villa beat Everton 1-0 in today's only game in the Premiership. Everton dominated the match, but a spectacular 90th minute chip from Paul Merson gave Villa all the points at Goodison Park. Villa had to thank goalkeeper David James for denying Everton with a string of fine saves. A collision with Everton striker Kevin Campbell meant James finished the match with a broken nose. The main headlines tonight: severe flood warnings have been issued to many parts of the country as Britain takes another battering from fresh storms. The travel chaos on the roads and the rail network this weekend could mean major problems for commuters tomorrow morning, and the Chancellor will tell business leaders he won't cave in to demands to cut fuel taxes. That's it. Good night.
Good evening. Well, once again, the gales and rain have been well forecast, but that doesn't make them any easier to live with, does it? The rain started off in the southwest earlier today. It's been sweeping north and